Today we're going to focus on the second part of section 5.1, which is comparing and ordering fractions. So we will put fractions in order by graphing and by using least common denominator. So first of all, we're going to compare some positive fractions. You guys have already probably seen this last year, but just to remind you, here are the denominators of 3/4 and 9/10, 4 and 10. We want to think about their least common multiple so that we can create equivalent fractions. Their least common multiple would be 20, and therefore 20 is their least common denominator. We want to create common denominators so that we can compare the numerators. So we're going to have denominators of 20. First, we understand that 4 times 5 would give us 20. So then we have to do 3 times 5, 15. Then we have to think about 9 and 10. 10 times 2 gives us 20. 9 times 2 gives us 18. If we compare the numerators, we see that 18 is bigger. Therefore, 3/4 is less than 9/10. Now we can also think about the pieces. This is something you might not have thought of before, but if you cut a brownie pan into 4 pieces, huge slices, and another pan into 10 pieces, small slices, and then take away 1 piece from each, the brownie pan with the 4 slices will be taking away a bigger piece. So that means it's going to be less than the one where only a small piece is taken away. So I'll write that in. Big pieces, small pieces. Be thinking about that as you look at the denominators. Now let's think about comparing negative fractions. So remember, if we were to look at the absolute values, 9/11 would be bigger than 6/11, but we're really thinking about -9 and -6. Now -9 is smaller than, less than -6, therefore since they have the same denominator, -9/11 would be smaller than -6/11. It would be further away from 0. So now let's compare two negative fractions with unlike denominators. So the denominators again, we have 8 and 10, same process. Their least common multiple is 40. So 40 is their least common denominator. Let's recreate some new fractions. We're going to do the same thing as before. We can do 10 times 4 is 40, and 7 times 4, 28. 8 times 5 is 40, 5 times 5, 25. But we need to make sure that we have the negative signs. Now we can just think about it as -25 and -28. So we know that -25 is closer to 0. It's bigger. So it's going to be the opposite of what it would be if it were positive. Therefore, -5/8 is greater than -7/10. Now we have 3 numbers that we're going to put in order from least to greatest. They're all negative. Now we can create common denominators, but before we do that, let's think about what they represent. -1/2 is the first one. So are any of them less than -1/2? Well, -1/2 would be the furthest from 0. So we already know that one is the smallest. So that one right here is already in the right place. So now we need to compare -3/8 and -2/5. This one, let's create common denominators for. 40 would be our common denominator. 8 times 5 is 40, so 3 times 5 is 15. Add the negative sign. 5 times 8 is 40. 2 times 8 is negative 16. So now that we have our fractions in common denominators, we can say which one is more negative. That would be the next smallest one. Negative 16 would be more negative, so we're actually going to switch the order. If we were to write the final order, we would have negative 1/2, negative 2/5, and negative 3/8. Go ahead and try this one on your own. You could simplify fractions, create common denominators, and we'll talk about this one together in class. If we were to compare these two fractions, negative over negative, and then positive 5/12, remember, negative over negative simplifies to be positive, so these two fractions would be equal to each other, because the first would simplify to be the second. And then again, if we have 7/10 and 7/11, we have to be careful. They don't have the same denominator, but they have the same number of pieces. So let's go back to brownies. If we had a brownie pan that was cut into 10 pieces, and a brownie pan that was cut into 11 pieces, the one with 10 pieces would have bigger pieces, right? So 7 of them would be bigger than 7 of the 11-piece brownie pan. So we could say, without even creating a common denominator, 7/10 is greater than 7/11. When we have the same numerator, we can look at the denominator and think about which pieces are smaller or bigger. Here's your exit pass. Go ahead and order these from least to greatest. Look at the fact that they have the same numerator, same number of pieces. Think about the size of the pieces in the denominator.